So, if you have been following along at all on my TBR tracker that I post on my TBR videos, and or even just watched my stuff making my TBR for this month, you might have noticed that we've kind of hit the point in the year where TBRs kind of become meaningless for me. I do like planning and trying to pick out books that I'm like in the mood for to read. But obviously sometimes other books will take precedence because of due dates or because I just picked something up and it sounds really fun. Or I've been waiting on something for a long time, which was the case of like The Love Hypothesis when that one came in. And so, we're at the point where it's kind of meaningless in some ways for me to be making a TBR. However, as I've also just barely said, I do still like trying to plan my reading and having an idea of things that I want to try to get to. Also, it kind of helps me track a little bit of like book due dates sometimes, to be like, okay, I know these things are coming up due, so obviously I should probably prioritize them on my TBR so that I can read them before having to return them to the library. Not that I couldn't just check them out again, but then I'm at least like going through the books that I get from the library versus just being like, I'll just hold on to everything for like 3 months at a time and then recheck it out over and over, kind of a thing. So here we are. We're going to talk about my April TBR. You can kind of see it here. I have given myself kind of a big list again because even if I only read like 3 things from it, which I think is about where I'm at for my TBR for this month, though I have read more books than that, it's just like I said, sometimes other things get in the way. But, so even if I only read like 3 of these books in the month of April, I'm sure I'll still do a fair amount of reading, but these are the ones I'm hoping to get to in the month of April, so thus they're here for the TBR video. Yeah, so let's just kind of hop right into it. The first thing that I've got for my list is the Annual Migration of Clouds. This one is a science fiction, which I don't generally read a lot of, but there's mind-altering fungi and like a post-apocalyptic-ish type of setting, it sounds like. In fact, the end of the description here says that it's a deeply personal tale in this post-apocalyptic hope punk novella. So kind of a mishmash of a variety of things, and I'm very intrigued by it just for that. Also, since it's a shorter sci-fi, I think that'll probably be a good way to do it. And since it's like a post-apocalyptic one, that's more the vein of things I generally am, like space sci-fi, which is really not my thing most of the time. Sometimes I read Star Wars ones and that's about it, because I already know kind of the technology and things in Star Wars, whereas some of like the really hard space sci-fi, I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what these space things are. My brain doesn't do well with this, so I don't do a lot of the space ones, but more this style that's semi-close to a modern age because it's like a post-apocalypse or has like a sciencey background to it. Those ones I like as science fiction. So I'm very intrigued to see how this one goes. Next up, we have Spindle Splintered, which I believe is a Sleeping Beauty retelling and is also very short, so I'll be very disappointed with myself if I don't get through this one, because I love Sleeping Beauty. It's probably my favorite fairy tale, even though like the original one is very strange with the trolls and her having twins while she's still asleep and things. It's a weird fairy tale, but it's probably my favorite, in large part because of like the Disney, but just the whole idea of it in general is the one that generally appeals to me the most. So I'm intrigued to read a retelling, and hopefully it'll be a fun one. Next, I'm really excited for this one. This is the Matzo Ball. This is a contemporary romance. It takes place between Jewish characters. If you couldn't guess from the Matzo Ball part, which I'm assuming is going to be like a play on words, a kind of a punny title, which I'm a sucker for contemporary romance with like a punny title, but also it's kind of a cute premise because she is Jewish, but she loves Christmas, so it'll kind of be playing with like the holiday season and stuff, I think, and that'll be fun. She's like a writer and stuff and is supposed to be writing a Hanukkah romance, but she loves Christmas and oh no, what do we do? It just sounds really adorable and I'm very excited for it. I've been having a lot of fun with the contemporary romances that I've found this year, and this one sounds like another charming one to put on my list. Also, kind of like diversity-wise, I haven't really read any that are like Jewish, so I think that'll be a fun twist on the formula as well. Next up, continuing my goal for the year, even though I've been doing really awful the last 2 months on actually completing any reading within this, I want to read The Tough Guide to Fantasyland, which is a Diana Wynne Jones, so trying to work on that challenge. Hopefully I'll have finished the short story collection Unexpected Magic by the end of this month. We'll see. But that's kind of the goal right now. I haven't even started Dog's Body, which was my actual one for the month of March. But as I kind of referenced when I talked about picking Dog's Body, I wasn't really very excited to read it, so I ended up returning it to the library, and I'll probably just check it out at a later time if I decide that it's really worth putting in my trying to reread all of the oeuvre of Diana Wynne Jones. Which, since I didn't like it the first time, I don't know if it is worth it. But that is kind of the point of rereads in some ways, too, to see if your tastes have changed and stuff. Based on what my friend who was also rereading some Diana Wynne Jones has said, when she reread that one, though, I don't think my opinions will have changed on it. If anything, they might get worse. But anyways, the one for April is going to be The Tough Guide to Fantasyland. This one is kind of a trope talk kind of book, I think, if I recall correctly. But it talks about kind of fantasy things and fantasy writing to some degree, I believe. I don't know if I ever actually have read this one, so I'm very intrigued. And hopefully that'll be a fun Diana Wynne Jones book for April. Next up, I'm doing another play on books with the same title, or I have plans to do that for the month of March, and the ones that I want to do for that are The House Guest, and The Housekeeper, and The Professor, and that being because a housekeeper and a house guest, they're definitely not really the same thing, because a housekeeper is always in the house and just kind of runs it, and a house guest is obviously someone who's visiting, but I thought they sounded similar enough title-wise that I'm gonna figure out some play on that, I think, as a books on the same title one to go in that. So hopefully it'll be fun. Also, The House Guest is a anthology collection, so I will either read just that short story or consider this a short story collection to try to get through for the month, as I talked about, as that's one of my goals. But I do have another anthology, actually, but I do not have a physical copy of. But Michael Brent Collins, who is a horror author that I really enjoy, just came out with a horror anthology called Future Tense, which I picked up for 99 cents on Kindle, which was his release price. I think it might still be that price. You'd have to go look if you're interested in it. But yeah, that's going to be my both Kindle and short story anthology that I'm going to try to get through for the month of April to complete that goal. I'm very excited for it. The last anthology of his I read was really fun, and his non-anthologies that I've read I've also really enjoyed. So I'm looking forward to that one as part of it. Continuing on with some of my other goals, I also have nonfiction that I want to get through in April, because that was one of my other goals, is at least one nonfiction, and I have 2 options for this month that hopefully I will get through both. We've got the Book of Eels, which is about heels. It's kind of obvious just from the title. And then we've got the Pregnancy Project. This is one that I came across because of those free movies that they do on YouTube that they're like free with ads. The Pregnancy Project was one of those movies on YouTube, and then I found out it was based on real events in a book. And I was like, oh, the book's probably even better than this who knows how sensationalized account movie, because it's not like a documentary about the project or anything. But so the general idea of this is about a girl who pretends to be pregnant while she's in high school and does it as like a school project. So I'm very intrigued. It's such an interesting premise, and going to be, I think, an interesting look at the way people stereotype and make judgments and all that kind of a thing. And I'm very intrigued. So I've got a fun animal one and then just an interesting social experiment one for my nonfiction for April. And then the final one I have for April is another romance. I'm also working on a reading list through my library, and they've got like a list of prompts for that, and one of the prompts was to read a romance with a single parent in it. And for that, we have April, May, Fall, which is about a single mom. And it's the only book that I've found thus far that is a romance that features a single parent, so that's part of why I picked it up. But also, the title just has that punny kind of feel to me. I don't know why April, May, Fall feel pun, but it does to me. So I picked it up also for the punny title. And hopefully it'll be a fun one. It's also got like social media kind of commentary romance to it, because the mom is a social media influencer who does yoga and things, which I think you could from the cover. But yeah, so I'm very intrigued to see how this one turns out too. Hopefully it'll be a fun one. Like I said, I've been doing pretty good with the contemporary romances I've picked up this year so far, so hopefully this will be another fun one. But yeah, I think that's all I've got for now. I will leave my TBR tracker down in the description if you want to see how I do tracking my books for this humongous TBR this month, or if you want to see other months and how I did compared to the TBR that I made, and or see if I managed to read any more from my TBR for the month of March before the end of March. All that kind of thing. It'll be down below. If you have any comments about your own TBRs and want to share, if you happen to have read any of these books and want to share your thoughts, feel free to share down below. That's all I've got for now. This is the Not Harper signing out.